Welcome to episode 6 of the Revolution podcast, where I, your host Ryan, sit down with industry experts to discuss the latest trends in e-mobility, clean tech, and the future of transportation. Today I'm joined by Chris Ramsey, electric vehicle adventurer, speaker, presenter, and expedition leader at Plug-in Adventure. Widely regarded as the pioneer of overland and endurance electric vehicle and sustainable adventures, Chris has taken his audiences across continents and through more than 20 countries on a series of epic world-first adventures using zero-emissions transport. As the founder of Plug-in Adventure, Chris has not only pioneered and changed the way the adventure industry explores our fragile planet, but is also breaking Guinness World Records along the way. Into the episode we go. Thank you for joining the podcast, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, Ryan. It's good to be here and chat to your listeners.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And I'd actually like to start with hearing a little bit about your passion for electric vehicles and sustainability and how it all started, really.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to say I've got this fairy tale story that when I grew up, I was passionate about sustainability, and I was one of these guys that kind of latched on to environmental issues. But reality, it isn't. I was born in a little town called Redcar in northeast of England. That actually now does have a wind farm, interesting enough.
Okay.
But I had a forces background. My father was in the forces, so I spent a lot of time as a child traveling around the world. Probably one of the most amazing places I was in Berlin during the time the wall was still up. So I remember Checkpoint Charlie and all that amazing kind of historical figures from that time. But sustainability was never really on my agenda, and it's something I was never really aware of. And ironically, my father moved to Aberdeen, the oil and gas capital of Europe, because he fixed helicopters. And all these helicopters that travel backwards and forwards to the offshore rigs. So I evidently grew up in Aberdeen over the last 20 years and fell into the same old routine of working in the oil and gas industry, because that is the industry here. And it was actually not until one day that an advert for an electric car flashed up on my screen as one of the adverts along one of the banners, and I was thinking, electric cars, what's this all about? And that's how my passion for sustainability and electric vehicles kind of started, because until then I just did like everybody else. I recycled paper, I recycled my bottles. I traveled, or I went into the mountains. I did do a lot of travel around the world, quite a lot, and I always made sure when I was in these environments that I didn't litter, I didn't, damage the environment while I was there. So I was conscious in that way. But ironically, I was obviously then working in an industry that was at that time was destroying the planet. And so when I discovered the car, I took that electric car, that Nissan Leaf, back in 2012, jumped in it with a friend, and we had this madcapped idea. We'd drive around the UK and drive to all 3 UK capital cities and find out just what this technology is all about, because essentially that's how my brain works. To understand something, I throw myself straight into it and right in the deep end. And well, about 60 chargers in the entire country at that point, to say the least. It was a bit of a nightmare. We charged in Asda's front entrance. We were dangling extension cables out of hotel windows, but I loved it. I gotta say, I absolutely loved it. I really did. And that kind of kickstarted things for me then back in 2012. And since then, things have just grown. And, it kind of, if you look at it today, fast forward to today, I've driven now everything from a Twizy to being sat in a Rimac and been along in a Rimac Concept 1. I've held talks for the United Nations and WWF about climate and conservation projects. And every day, the passion to play a small part in the transition of this sustainable planet, or to provide a more sustainable planet for our future generations, that just grows in me every day. And it's been a very varied story and very varied journey to this point.
It's interesting you said that the kind of infrastructure wasn't there 8 years ago in 2012. And actually owning an electric car then was probably not convenient for anybody. Over the years, you must have really seen a change, a shift in the infrastructure. That means that actually owning the electric car becomes a much easier thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, after that trip, I actually loved the electric vehicle life so much that I actually went out and got my Nissan Leaf. I ended up buying at that time a 2014 Nissan Leaf, and I still have that car today. And we talk about the early adopters, and yes, I've been in those stages where I've driven from Aberdeen down to as far as London, and it's taken a long time because I'm driving every 50, 60 miles and charging the car, which is a nightmare in a sense, because you couldn't use the air conditioning, you couldn't use the heating, because it drained the battery. And but fast forward to today again, and you look, as you say, the infrastructure has grown immensely. We have more charging locations in this country than we do have petrol stations. And the battery technology, and that's a big part of where people maybe get concerned about battery reliability. Battery technology has come on just leaps and bounds. The old generation Leaf batteries compared to today are just night and day. And we're talking 200 miles with a lot of cars comfortably on one charge, and that's driven at motorway speeds. And that just makes the whole electric vehicle journey and long distance journeys that people do very rarely, I'll add, because some people always think they drive long distances all the time. When they talk about transitioning to an electric car, you're looking at those 200 miles driving for 2.5, 3 hours, and then you want to stop anyway. And then there's charging infrastructure installed in all the motorway service stations, in hotels and places are off the motorway service stations. So charging becomes just as convenient as refueling your petrol car.
It's interesting, you kind of referred to the range anxiety that a lot of EV drivers, or potential EV drivers probably more so, have. And it's always, it's a common thing that we do as humans, which is look at the potential negatives of something and assume that those negatives are probably going to impact us more than they actually do. So as you say, people think that they're going to drive more than that 200, 300 miles, when in reality, that's very rare. And if they do, they're probably, or should be, taking breaks in between. And especially with fast chargers, you can actually charge your electric car fairly quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I get told quite a lot when you speak to people about driving electric cars. Say, right, okay, so what is it you need out of a car? And they completely discount the fact that 95% of their journeys are backwards and forwards to work, which in most cases are the maximum commute's around 18 miles, probably at the most in some places. So they then immediately jump to, I need to do 800 miles. And it's interesting because that barometer used to be 400 miles. And every time the battery ranges increase, people go, oh no, I need to go 500, then 600. Now we've got to 800. And you say, okay, so you drive 800 miles and at no point on that journey do you ever stop. You don't include either a breakfast stop or a lunch stop or a coffee stop. And everybody says no, but the motorway service stations are always rammed with combustion engine vehicles parked up, while people are inside the service stations, sitting, having coffees and buying their lunches and doing whatever they do. And I say, why think about it when you go into these service stations that you need to go and do what you need to do, and then you need to go and fuel your car, and then you need to get on the motorway? Why not just fuel your car while you're sitting there having your coffee? Because then the time it takes to charge, that 15 minutes, half an hour, 40 minutes, 2 hours that everybody throws out there, is irrelevant, because the car's doing something while you're doing what you need to do, and the car will be charged when you get back there.
Yeah, and particularly now with all the charging infrastructure, going to a service station on the motorway isn't going to be something difficult. I mean, obviously, availability might not always be easy, but there's always going to be an opportunity to charge your car, and as you say, you can charge your car at the same time as getting a coffee, having a meal, or something like that. So it's I guess it's just one of those arguments that people make as a potential risk if you're undertaking those really long journeys. But then those long journeys happen very rarely. In your case, probably more than other people. But yeah, I mean, even in those cases, you would have to obviously maybe plan it out a little bit more. But I think people imagine themselves driving down the motorway and suddenly running out of electricity in their car and then being stranded. But that doesn't happen very often.
Well, the interesting thing is there was a figure came out from the RAC, and I tried to find it before I came on this podcast, but I know it's somewhere between 50 and 60 cars, I believe it was. So they were saying how many cars run out of petrol every day on the motorway, or they get called out to. That's not necessarily how many cars have run out, but how many cars they get called out to for running out of fuel. And it was something ridiculous, like 50 to 60 cars. And when I asked them how many electric vehicle call-outs do they have for cars running out of charge, so we have no data at this point for that, because we've not really got anything on record. Now, not to say something hasn't happened maybe with people got AA or whatever, but at the end of the day, when you look at that as a contrast, saying to people, what happens when you run out of charge? Well, it never really happens, because you plan a hell of a lot better essentially in an electric vehicle than you do with a combustion engine vehicle, because that mindset of it just takes too much to put fuel in. I can run it right down to the edge. That mindset just goes out the window. You become so much more of an efficient and conscientious driver with an electric car. And that's coming from somebody who has taken electric vehicles right down to the edge many, many occasions on some of the trips I've done. And I guess we're all creatures of habit. And generally, whenever we drive on, but I'll talk from my personal experience, whenever I drive down south, which I do regularly from Aberdeen, generally I'm going down the M6. And because I know the route that I'm taking, or I know where I'm going, it's kind of like, well, I always factor in that service station or that service station because I know it. So that worry about running out of charge when you go on long journeys, again, is clawed back because of that, because you're a creature of habit, and you will go generally to the places that you know because you like the coffee there, or you like the food there, or you like the services. So in general, so you will go back to the places that you know.
So you've just mentioned there that you use your electric car for long distances. There is still a misconception that electric vehicles are more suitable for urban inner cities. What's your take on that?
Yeah, and I mean, when you look at the networks, we talk a lot about the service stations because that's where a lot of people need the infrastructure for the long journeys. But I mean, in Scotland here, for example, we have the ChargePlace charging network, the ChargePlace Scotland charging network. And these are installed in most of the local authority car parks, in cafes, in restaurants, in hotel car parks, and national trusts are now working quite. There's a few national trusts in Wales that are sites that are doing this as well, where they're installing a massive, what we would call fast chargers, so a charger where you would pull up with your car and it would charge, depending on what charge you have left, but it would charge say from 0 to 100% in anywhere between 4 to 6 hours, 8 hours, depending on the size of the battery. If you've got a larger 100 kilowatt hour battery pack, something like that. So it's not just about the motorway services. There's so much infrastructure expanding everywhere, because a lot of people are understanding, or businesses are understanding, that EV drivers like myself will go to destinations because they have a charging facility, and they'll happily go there and they'll spend money at that facility because they're getting a service, they're getting the charging. So the infrastructure is spreading quite rapidly and across the UK and across Europe. I've been to quite a lot, and the infrastructure is expanding really well there. But again, to a certain extent, it needs to give public confidence. Because a lot of obviously the myths that we've tried to dispel over the years, which always puzzles me because we've been talking about the same myths since 2010 as what we talk about today. Range anxiety, the batteries don't run out in 3 years, etc. There needs to be a lot more charging infrastructure in the ground to build that public confidence. But as individual EV drivers' confidence increases within their driving capabilities, they'll understand that infrastructure is not actually required day to day. It's required on those very few occasions when they do go and have a journey to the local mountains, or to the local beach, or wherever it be, or a longer journey.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Okay, so we've touched upon it already, but you've completed some rather long distance adventures with an electric car, notably John O'Groats to Land's End and also the Mongol Rally. Shall we maybe start with John O'Groats to Land's End and how that all came about, and maybe even if you could briefly explain what John O'Groats to Land's End is for people who don't live in the UK?
Yeah, so John O'Groats to Land's End is for the UK, is the most iconic route that's completed by a lot of people for various charities and Guinness World Records. But it's basically the most northerly tip in John O'Groats to the most southerly tip of the UK, Land's End. that is around 800 miles. And a friend of mine, on my very first adventure, I met a gentleman called Jonathan Porterfield from Eco Cars. He's a wonderful individual, and we got to know each other over the many years, and we just had this mad idea that we thought, hey, let's go and drive John O'Groats to Land's End, and we'll basically prove to people with a first generation Nissan Leaf, so 60, 65 miles, driving comfortably, driving carefully on a battery, and we'll just prove to people that you can drive from John O'Groats to Land's End in an electric vehicle, and we'll see if we can do it in under 24 hours. And that's because we're taking those rest breaks that you would normally take on such a long journey. And we were just over 24 hours on our first trip. We got hold of a Nissan Leaf from Nissan. We set off. We shared everything on social media, and we had all these mad-capped ideas, because after a couple of charges, the battery temperature started to increase on the car. We had there's an inspection hatch where you can lift it open, and we thought, wow, it shows the emergency release on the battery. And I'm not promoting this to anybody who's listening, by the way. But we thought if we have the air conditioning going, the air conditioning could get into there and maybe cool the battery down. And all it really did was cool myself and Jonathan down to the point we were frozen by the time we got to Land's End. It did nothing to the battery, and in fact, the battery didn't even need it. The battery regulated itself with no problem, and we drove all the way to Land's End, rapid charging it back to back. And basically stopping for rest when we charged for that 25 minutes each time. And that was us when we got to Land's End. But we got to the end and thought, actually, we reckon we could do that quicker. So we actually turned around and drove all the way back to John O'Groats, and we beat our time. We beat our 24-hour time. So we were not that far shy of 48 hours in total for there and back. In a first generation Nissan Leaf, so like 65 miles, carefully driven, real world range.
Wow. And just for some comparison, what would be the difference between a first generation Nissan Leaf and a 2020 or 2019 Nissan Leaf in terms of the range?
Well, I mean, I haven't had too much experience with the new 62 kilowatt hour battery pack yet, but the 40 kilowatt, basically you'd be getting comfortably about 130 miles. We'd be doubling our range per charge. So we'd easily do that within the 24-hour time slot. In actual fact, I actually did a test with Nissan, the guys from Nissan Europe, and we did the 3 Peaks challenge. Okay. So where you basically drive to all the 3 highest mountains in the UK and summit them and come back down and drive within 24. You do all within 24 hours. We completed the challenge under 24 hours. I was driving, and thankfully the head of Nissan Europe was running up and down the mountains, so I was happy with that one. And we completed it in 24 hours. The autocar journalists, the experienced car drivers, were a mountain behind us, and they ended up bailing.
The Nissan Leaf in particular is one of those electric cars that I think people know about. Obviously, the main electric car that a non-EV fans or advocates would know is the Tesla. But in terms of affordable electric cars, not saying that Teslas aren't, but maybe the Nissan Leaf is that kind of mainstream starter, maybe electric vehicle.
Yeah, it certainly was back then. I mean, now the market has expanded so much because, I mean, for example, MG have come in with such an affordable vehicle now. I think they're under 30,000. They're low 20,000s for their electric vehicle, and bringing another one out soon as well. But you've got Peugeot and Vauxhall come out with a 208 and a Corsa. But back in the day, yes, the Leaf was. I mean, even people look at the high end value, and you kind of think today there's so much value on the market because there is a second-hand market for electric vehicles. Yeah. So, Leafs, all the first generation Leafs, and in some cases second generation, the 30 kilowatt hour battery pack, which for people out there, I hate talking about battery pack sizes because it confuses a lot of people. And it's the 30 kilowatt battery pack Leaf basically is 115 miles of real world driving range. So those cars, the price of those are coming down so much The Renault Zoe is another car there. The value, the price of these cars secondhand is so much more affordable now. And so a lot of people say, I can't afford to buy one of these brand new electric cars. Go secondhand. There's a great market, and there's some great companies out there offering them as well.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you make about the price thing, because I think a lot of people think that because electric vehicles are pretty new and modern, there isn't that market for secondhand vehicles, so therefore they have to buy it for the retail price. But as you just said, there is opportunities to buy electric vehicles, especially older generations, for lower costs.
Yeah, they've been on the market since 2000, at least 2010, 2011. So there's plenty of cars out there.
Yeah. Okay. So do you want to go to Land's End? Was that trip before the Mongol Rally, or did that happen after?
Yeah, no, that was my second trip, really, my second adventure.
Okay, so it was your first real test.
Yeah, and that's the first adventure going into the John Grit's Land's End was kind of when plug-in adventures really kind of started to take swing. And I kind of thought, yeah, this is something that I kind of really want to kind of pursue as a hobby at that time. So it really kind of drove things. And then in 2017, I was still involved in the oil and gas industry. I was running a manufacturing facility for a business that had oil and gas plus a renewable energy arm to the business.
Okay.
And I decided that's enough. The opportunity came for me to leave the business. And I decided to do that and decided that this is what I wanted to do with my life. This is what I wanted to spend my time doing. And no longer was I going to, I want to be a part of that industry that basically was destroying the planet, the very thing that I was trying to promote to people to say.
Yeah.
This is kind of a conflict. It was a conflict for me, and it was kind of a strange time, but I knew this was the right thing to do. So I took that jump. And the Mongol Rally was something I'd known about for about 6 years. And for the listeners that are not aware of the Mongol Rally, is basically it's a unsupported rally, which is just a public rally. So people start from London. It's Goodwood Racing Circuit, and they used to drive to Ulaanbaatar, the capital city of Mongolia, but they moved it to Siberia, a city called Ulan-Ude, and that's 10,000 miles. And the idea behind it is you start in London. You make your own way to Ulan-Ude, and when you get there, everybody has a party to celebrate. But the principle behind it is you cannot spend more than £1,000 on your car. The car cannot be more than a 1.2 litre engine, and it's got to be completely unsuitable for the journey. So things like Suzuki Jimmys and 4x4s and all this thing is completely out of the equation. The idea behind it is you will break down, or they want you to break down, so you have an adventure. I obviously ticked a number of those boxes, and pretty much everybody said that the car is the most unsuitable car they've ever had into the rally. But obviously, value-wise, at that time, that was a little bit of a thing. It was more expensive than £1,000 bracket, but the rally team said, look, we're happy to waive that, because to be honest with you, nobody in the company thinks you're going to finish the rally. So they were happy to let us enter. And so that was me saying I wanted to do two things. I wanted to just try and dispel those myths and straight away just quash them all together, that electric vehicles can go long distance if you really needed it to. Yes, we're going to the extreme, but it's showing that you can drive between cities absolutely fine. You can drive from one length of the country to the other absolutely fine. And we wanted to get rid of that. We need all charging infrastructure. For mass adoption, we need charging infrastructure to be absolutely everywhere. And the reason why I say that is because once we drove pretty much out of Romania, going to Bulgaria and then Turkey, we had no infrastructure. There was no charging infrastructure. So I had to map every 80 to 90 miles and just look for a town, a village, a building, some sort of power source.
Yeah.
So we could then, and I say we because my co-driver was my wife on this rally.
Oh wow.
We would pull up at these places and just literally get out with Google Translate and just rough translation into basically saying, can we just plug into your home, your restaurant, your petrol station, your cafe, We had electricity pylons, everything, to get power for the car.
Not all of these countries are very developed with electric vehicles. So the fact that there is actually still an opportunity to charge your electric car is pretty amazing.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It was kind of to say to people, look, think outside of your usual daily routines. Think outside of everything that you're conditioned to think. You have to go to a dedicated location to fuel your vehicle. Well, you don't, because 9 times out of 10, your home is going to be your refueling station, and your car sits. Well, they say statistics say 95% of its life idle, parked, doing nothing.
Wow.
So 95% of the time, your car is going to be parked and getting refueled. Whether it be your office, if you have workplace charging, or definitely at your home because you have access to a 3-pin plug, if you want the slowest form of charging. But then when we were on the trip, on the rally, it gave us another opportunity to do a couple of things. It wasn't really just all about dispelling those myths. We wanted to also go across continents. We were driving through 10,000 miles. We went through something like 18 different countries, 2 continents, and we were in countries that have never seen an electric car before. We're in countries that some people have never heard of an electric car before. Kazakhstan, for example, when we were there, we wanted to better inform that country because I knew about their oil and gas background. And I wanted to better inform that country about electrification, renewable energy, and sustainable energy. And to that note, we ended up getting invited to the World Future Energy Summit in Kazakhstan that was happening in the capital city. Okay. This is like their biggest world energy event. And so we were there, and we were one of the guest speakers, ended up being one of the guest speakers at that event. And from there, we met with the CEO of a petrol station, their major state petrol company. We met with the United Nations, and I'm pleased to say from that trip, purely from just driving across, we drove the full west to east of that country, the first electric car ever to do that. Wow. That inspired that petrol company and their government to go and start installing charging stations across the country. So they've got now something like 50. It grows every week, but they've got 50 electric vehicle charging points in that country now. And earlier last year, they announced they were opening the doors to Tesla, the first Tesla showroom in the capital city. Okay. They're opening the doors to Tesla, installing a supercharging network. And while I'm not saying I was the reason behind that, I'm saying I like to feel that what we did just opened up the eyes of that government a little bit more to the future, because they have so much potential in that country for renewable energy through wind and solar.
Well, what it suggests is that it didn't need a huge amount of convincing as soon as people saw the evidence, because as you say, they hadn't seen electric vehicles before. It's not a case of really having to convince them because the evidence is there that it's beneficial both for the environment but also for the country.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that companies, we live in a commercial world, and obviously I get that, but countries have to see the commercial viability, and businesses have to see the commercial viability in this, and I fully understand that. But it's kind of getting people to really understand the inspiring message that what they're doing for the future generations, that we're trying to build a better planet. But yes, there is money in it at the end of the day. With renewable energy, battery storage, vehicle to grid solutions, there is so much that businesses can do to transform their business models, and that's why we're now seeing that shift from the car manufacturers. Because the paradox for them is they've had to sell petrol and diesel cars as much as they can because that's where the profit is for them, I guess. Or else they wouldn't be able to invest as much in electric vehicles. So there will be a shift at some point, but supply chains and the commercial agreements all need to catch up with that, because they can't just switch off their supply chain networks tomorrow because they just want to start making electric vehicles. Because the situation we're in just now, and I don't want to trivialize the situation we're in just now at all, but we are going to be looking at mass scale redundancies again, because industries will start falling down, because the supplies will start falling down because manufacturers have just switched them off, and that's not sustainable.
Yeah, the business side that you mentioned there was interesting because, as you've said, for anything to work, a business has to see the financial benefits of doing so.
Yeah.
So it's not always about having people like you working for these automotive companies who are actually passionate But with your experience of working with automotive companies, are there people working for those companies who look beyond the financial gain and are actually advocates for electric vehicle adoption?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with pretty much most of the manufacturers out there in some way, shape, or form, and I can say there are a number of passionate individuals in there, and there needs. I guess I'm realistic again. There needs to be a balance. There needs to be that the individuals that playing the devil's advocate, but a lot of the misinformation within the companies themselves is being dispelled by these passionate individuals, and I've been fortunate to work with a couple of those individuals, especially. I'm not here to promote Nissan as much, but a lot of my work has been done with Nissan predominantly in the past through the kind support they gave me through the media side on the rally, and having the first, my first car was a Leaf, and all the adventures I did, they kind of have got behind from the media side, so I owe a lot to them in that sense. But a lot of the individuals that I met within Nissan, right up to vice VPs of the company, I can say that there are some passionate individuals, and coming from the oil and gas industry, I actually met with a couple of senior management team from Shell a few months back at a Formula E race, and it was interesting to have a conversation with them, because I will say there was one or two of those individuals that I could tell it wasn't towing a corporate line. They really were passionate about Shell looking to transition and make a difference. And I think that's another thing that maybe some industries need to recognize. As much as these guys are demonized, and I understand, and they have done some things in the past, we also need to fully understand and realize that they are going to play a massive part in how this energy shift is going to happen, because their businesses need to transition and are transitioning as we speak. And it needs to be done at such a rate that BPs and Shells can still be living around us and sustaining our world.
You're mentioning businesses who are infamous for being in the oil and gas industry, switching to EVs, but actually less so about new companies coming up, creating EVs from the beginning, because as you say, these oil and gas companies and the industry in general has a lot of money in it, and these companies are worth billions. So actually it's these companies that have the resources.
Yeah, I mean, the idealist in me says that I would prefer the latter to prevail. The companies that are coming from grassroots, and are basically doing it for the right reasons, and they're in it from the start for the right environmental reasons. But the reality is, obviously, a lot of the BP, Shells, and all these major corporations that are already out there have the financial backing, they have the clout to get behind the transition of their own. And if that ends up being that they actually support some of these grassroots companies, and then that's fine. We've got to understand that's going to happen at some point, and some of these people are going to get into bed with each other, and it's just a fact of life. And for me, as long as it means the planet is going in the right direction, and our heat reduction is happening on the planet, then I wouldn't say I don't care. I do, but it's kind of, that's the bigger picture that I guess we need to look to.
Okay.
I mean, I was going to say, we have the likes here in the UK. We obviously have the likes of people like Octopus Energy, OVO Energy, these kind of companies coming up, and I think the business models that they've got in place, and they I'd like to feel are in it for the right reasons. They're starting with a sustainable model. They're starting with pure renewable energy, supplying renewable energy to 100% renewable energy to homes, and EDF. They're now transitioning to that. So if these organizations can take a foothold in the market, then that's what I'd like to see.
The next thing I wanted to talk about is actually your Guinness World Record, which I think is pretty incredible. I think we'd all love to be sitting here with a Guinness World Record. But that's for the greatest distance on an electric bicycle, not car, in 12 hours. I'd love to hear a little bit about that and where the passion for electric bicycles comes as well.
Yeah, I mean, everything about me is about showcasing low emissions transport. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not a keen cyclist, and that's one of the things that some people say that makes this a world record sound a little bit even more bizarre and somewhat mind-blowing as well, because my mindset is kind of very can-do. I look at something like the Mongol Rally. I'd never driven past France, but yet I had it in my head, hey, we're going to enter the Mongol Rally and we're going to drive to Siberia. Yeah. And things will go wrong, things will go well, and you just adapt and you deal with it. But we can do this. And that was pretty much like the world record. I was chatting with a friend at an electric vehicle event, and some e-bikes were whizzing past. And for the listeners that are not too familiar with e-bikes, basically it's a conventional. Think of a conventional bike. It's pedal assisted. It's a small motor in there. So when you pedal, within 3 rotations of pretty much of pedaling, you can be up to 15.5 miles an hour. Yeah. And then at that point, the assistance takes over and it's full or your own leg power, and you're just running yourself like a normal bike. And so basically I saw these bikes whizzing by, and my friend said to me, look, have you ever thought about doing something with an electric bike? And I was like, okay, yeah, good idea, because it's another form of, we need to transition away from cars, and we need to, in cities, it'd be great if we had more uptake of cycling in cities in the UK. So to promote that, I kind of thought, what could I do? And then I've always wanted to hold a Guinness World Record. I've watched that TV show from a child. And I thought, cool, I'm going to see what Guinness World Records are out there for electric bikes. And I saw, after a couple of weeks, I saw there was a Guinness World Record out there for the longest distance in 12 hours. It was 110.6 miles. And that was set back in 2016, if I remember rightly. And I looked at it and thought, can I do that? And I did a bit of maths and worked things out, and I thought, I reckon I could do this. So I got a few people involved, contacted Guinness World Records to apply for the record. Everything was officiated, and I could go and take the record. And again, amazingly supported by my wife, who is really the backbone behind a lot of the things that I do. Yeah. And the unsung hero on this, she was managing all the team, because everything needs to be officiated. Every single lap, every single hour needs to be documented. So I got a standard bike. Due to my work schedule at that time, I literally had 2 hours of training. And I jumped on that bike and cycled in 4 3-hour stints. Yeah. I do 3 hours around the track. It was literally on a closed track, just cycling round and round and round for 3 hours. 5-minute break to refuel, back on the bike and get going again. And I completed 180.75 miles in that 12 hours in Scottish wind, sleet, snow, rain, wind, and then sunshine, as we get in most days. And that was literally just owing to the mindset that I have of say, hey, like, I haven't trained, but I'm just going to go and do this because it needs to be done. I need to show that this is possible, not just from my strength point of view, but from the fact of just how great this technology is. Because if I can do this with very little training, again, we could replace our cars in cities. A lot of people could replace cars for their 5 mile, even 10 mile commute. And I cycle a lot more now in the cities.
I saw the bike you used for the world record was the Volt Pulse, and it has 60 miles of range. Not all electric bikes have as much range as that. But regardless, for the average cyclist, even 30 miles would probably be enough. And then it's a really simple charge process.
Yeah, I mean, and in terms of that, I mean, just to highlight the capability of that technology, because the models vary. So some bikes have swappable batteries, some bikes don't. They have built-in batteries because, again, day to day, like an electric vehicle, you don't need the full capacity of that battery because it's not working 100% of the time, because your leg power takes up over most of the time. But to showcase that technology, myself and a friend, we attended the Fully Charged Live event last year.
Okay, yeah.
So we challenged each other. We're both big fans of the Renault Twizy. So he drove a Renault Twizy from Aberdeen to Silverstone, which is over 500 miles. And I raced him on that exact bike, and being able to swap the batteries. And I won. Because the charge time of the battery to stop and have to charge the batteries it would charge within about 2 hours, the bike battery, and the Renault Twizy charges in about that same kind of time. So it was all about mental strength and and the ability to manage a charging strategy. So it's kind of a good way to show how that bike compares to a similar bit of technology at the time, and obviously for anybody that knows the Renault Twizy, that's just a cool little car to kind of spend some time with as well.
It doesn't really look like a car. It's kind of a mini car with wheels that open like a Lamborghini or something like that.
It's classed as a quadricycle here in the UK.
Okay.
So you can't drive it on the motorways. It's only allowed on A roads, and it can actually be driven on, I believe, a learner license. Okay. So anybody out there looking to learn to drive, or looking for a small car to commute about in, and on an L license, you've got that, because you can actually sit two people in the car, albeit second person in the back straddling the driver, which is a very, very unique experience, especially with that suspension, when it's quite hard. But it's in any car event, I will say, and you gave the reference there to Lamborghini doors. I've been in so many different events where people will walk past BMW i8s or the latest high-end supercar, and they'll look at the Renault Twizy, because it just looks like a cool little funky piece of kit.
So I've seen that through your business, Plug-in Adventures. You've managed to work with some major media companies like CNN, Sky, and the BBC, as well as a lot of automotive companies.
Yeah, I mean, it's been, like I say, I always refer to it as a bit of a whirlwind time, and it's kind of just evolved. I mean, like I say, Plug-in Adventures was literally a hobby. Started out on social media, just showing what was my then passion for electrification, and kind of my journey into learning about electric vehicles and charging infrastructure. And then just prior to going on the Mongol Rally, it kind of turned into a little bit more, because one of the manufacturers wanted to get me on board to see how their car was performing, how it would perform under multiple charging journeys. And then the Mongol Rally happened, and then from there, that's when it really became a full-fledged business, because I saw that that's where the value for me was as an individual, to share my passion and my understanding and my knowledge with people, to try and dispel those myths. And a lot of the work with CNN and the BBC and even Sky News came from the Mongol Rally, because of that story. That became basically pretty much one of the biggest stories of 2017, electric vehicle stories of 2017. Our media reach was pretty much in every country. Australia was writing about us. Argentina was writing about us. We just countries that we'd never thought, and publications never thought about, were writing about us and what we were doing. And so then progressed from there, that I decided that this is what I wanted to do. And the adventures always sound great, and it's a lot of the time I spend on podcasts like this talking about, but the reality is I spend probably about 5 to 10% of my actual working time on adventures, because these things take years, 2 years, maybe more, in the planning to actually make a lot of these things happen. Because obviously, again, when we talk about commercial, these need finance. A lot of these projects need financed. So then I spend a big chunk of my time working with businesses when we're talking about fleets looking to transition to electrification, and looking at different forms of electrification. So I spend a bit of my time working with organisations and advising them on that. And I spend a bit of time with the Scottish Government as well, attending a lot of their electric vehicle events, giving talks about life with an electric car, and answering questions from the public about charging infrastructure, different cars that are out there. I'm advising them places that they can go to look at getting the best deal on a car, etc., etc. And I have done a bit of work with the BBC as well on one of their car shows, about advising them on electric car features that they were going to be doing. So that is a side of the business that is starting to expand a lot more. And that excites me a little bit more, because the adventures are great. The adventures are really good fun to do. But being involved in mainstream media and being involved in events as a speaker or a host allows me to get that message out to a bigger audience over the period of those 2 years where I'm not doing an adventure.
Well, yeah, I think the combination of the adventure, which serves as almost a proof that it's possible, and then, speaking in front of crowds and talking about that adventure, is a great combination for raising awareness and advocacy going forward.
Yeah, I mean, the adventure side of things is, for me, is always the best. Is always going to be the best thing as well, because we've all grown up with things like Top Gear, shows like Top Gear, and we all like adventure. A lot of people like adventure series, and that sparks imagination. That sparks fire in people and makes them want to go and do things like that, or very maybe on a small scale. Yeah. So the adventure side for me is one, it fuels that passion in me to go and travel, because I just love experiencing new cultures and meeting people from various different countries and learning more about their cultures. But in turn, it's what inspires other people and captures other people. When we're on these adventures and we're sharing our stories and we're sharing what's happening and we're sharing how we're charging, who we're meeting, what we're doing, and how the vehicles are performing, people, it just captures their imagination, it opens up their hearts, and then immediately you have got them, and they can take on board so much more information when they're immersed in that project. And that's why, I mean, it was, again, I always say not to trivialize the situation that we're going through just now, because getting through this is the biggest thing that we need to do, and everything else is to a certain extent insignificant. But I was away to announce my next basically large scale international project, literally a couple of weeks before the lockdown, the situation COVID-19 came into play. So, and like I say, that's not a big deal. The project is still happening. The project will be announced at the right time. But the fact is, obviously, anything I can do and we can do to support the country to get through this at the moment is the bigger picture. But yeah, there is a big project coming. There is, and it's going to be, without giving too much away, it is going to be basically the biggest adventure and project that the automotive and sustainable industry has ever seen. The main thing about it as well is it's basically showing that, and everything I've done to date is basically saying that, yes, adventure. The industry, we can go out and adventure, we can explore, and we can educate the public about our environments. But every adventure has to have a purpose.
Yeah, true.
And this adventure will redefine the way that we adventure, and the way that hopefully adventurers out there, the industry and the travel industry, will then move forward and change the way that they travel, they explore the world as well.
The way I like to finish every podcast is by asking if there's anything you'd like to plug, which is ironic because your name is Plug-in Adventures, but also because you've just mentioned that there's a massive project that you're working on at the moment. So I guess that's something you'd want to plug in the future. Is there anything else?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's literally, it's just saying, people think about what I've spoken about during the course of this podcast about the services that I offer. I am not just an adventurer. I do so much more. And with regards to the international project, we are on the lookout for partners for that project. So if there are any businesses out there, and I'm again sensitive because obviously the climate that we're in just now, but if there are anybody that would like to reach out and find out more about that project as a serious investment opportunity, then feel free to get in contact. But again, I'm conscious of the current climate that we're in, so I didn't really want to push that too much.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Chris, for joining the podcast.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for inviting me along. And I look forward to see if I can be of help to anybody in the future.
It was fantastic to have Chris on the podcast for our 6th episode. From debunking myths about range anxiety, discussing Chris's EV journeys from Land's End to John O'Groats, and the Mongol Rally driving a Nissan Leaf, and then his e-bike Guinness World Record, before finishing on his collaboration with media outlets and his next big project. We'll be back for episode 7 on June 3rd.